Okay, this is a short video about my square foot gardening, and it has to do with irrigation. One of the commenters in my last video mentioned that I was going to talk about alternate ways to irrigate a square foot garden. And this all started, if you watch my last video, with the problem I had with using drippers. Now these drippers I have here are in a grid pattern, and I ended up putting quite a few in there. A lot of 1 gallon per minute drippers and also some 2 gallon per minute drippers. And I found out I was continually increasing the length of time to water the square foot garden, because each square got water at the edges where the drippers were, but it had trouble getting water into the center of the square. And I think the reason for that was this was a pretty good mix. It's a raised garden. It's about a foot high and about 6 inches below, so it's about 18 inches of good soil. And when the water came out from the edges of the square, of each square, even though it was coming out pretty well, it would go down into the soil and not spread out. I did try putting some compost and some grass clippings and so forth around each square, and that helped a little bit. But I did some calculations, and you can figure those out or look at those in the past video, the last video, that said I needed about 10 gallons to produce 1 inch of rainfall or 1 inch of water. And I have those calculations in the last video. I ended up putting, that's 10 gallons a week, by the way. I ended up putting almost 40 gallons of water a week on this just to get it to spread out. So I thought I would try an alternate method. And this method, this year what I did was I hand watered. When the seedlings get bigger and the roots spread out, it's not as big a problem. When they're small and you're putting a single tomato plant in the center of the square or a single pepper plant, then it becomes more of a problem because the roots are small, they haven't spread out yet. Once they spread out, it seems like it's less of a problem. So I'm really looking for a way to water this automatically when the seedlings are small and you're using like 9 or 16 vegetable seedlings in each square. And as I said, the edges of the square will probably be okay. It's the middle of the square we've got to worry about. So let's take a look at what I have here and what I'm going to do for alternate methods of watering. Okay, first up is this little gadget. I made a little fixture here, and I'm using a pressure reducer, and it reduces the pressure to 25 psi, and I just go into a little bracket, and this is a Toro model 570 pop-up sprinkler. So the top pops up like this when it's under pressure, and it sprays the water in various directions. They have different nozzles here. This one here happens to be a 570 fixed spray nozzle, full circle. At 20 psi, it produces 0.74 gallons per minute. So 10 minutes would give you 7.5 gallons, so roughly 15 minutes, theoretically, a week would give you about an inch for my 4 foot by 4 foot square foot garden. So the garden has been harvested for this year. It's middle of October, and hopefully I can get this done before it starts raining. So let's see how this works. Okay, here we are with the 570 all hooked up. Let's give it a try. So I think it's pretty even, but you can see in the center of this there's it almost looks like 280 degree sprinklers as opposed to a complete circle. There's a little bit of space in the middle. It's not a lot, but this would probably work. You see, it's wetting the rocks or the edging of the square foot garden, so it's getting out there. But I don't know that it's getting into the center of the square foot garden. It's a flat spray and it's going out. And let me move the camera a little bit. You can see those two spaces laterally. So I'm going to let this run a while and we'll see if it wets the center at all. So it does seem like it's wetting the center. My sense is that it's wetting the edges more than the center because it's a pretty flat spray. I cut back the flow a little bit because even with 20 or 25 pounds per square inch, it throws out quite a bit of quite a distance. The nozzle it says it's a 7-foot radius nozzle, so that's well beyond what you need. That's why I put in a 20 psi pressure reducer, and there's a little screw on top that you can cut it back even further. But if you cut it back too much, it kind of dribbles. So I think this is a good compromise. So it does look like it's wetting the soil. As I said, I think it's wetting the edges more than the 2 feet around the center of it. Okay, let's try the next one. Okay, this is the next sprinkler. This is called a rose, and like the previous sprinkler that I showed you, the pop-up, this micro spray can be either a full circle, a quarter circle, or a half circle, depending on what kind of the way you assemble it. So I've got this assembled now for a full circle. And let's try this out and see how this works. Okay, the way this is hooked up is you can see it uses 1/4-inch tubing, and it goes into the drip 1/2-inch manifold that's here. I just unplugged one of the emitters and I plugged this in. So I don't know if you can see this, but it has some very fine streams coming out of it. I don't know if you can see that on camera. But there's about 12 streams that are coming out of it, and it's got a low cone. In other words, it looks like an inverted umbrella a little bit, and that seems to be okay. But if the dirt you're trying to wet isn't along one of those 12 or so streams, it may stay dry. So I'm going to let this run a while, see what we'll get out of this. So it's been on about 10 minutes now, and if you can see that white little piece of plastic there I put in there, that area is still fairly dry. So it's working, but it's taking a while. This is made by Mr. Landscape. I get most of my irrigation stuff, especially the drip irrigation, from Drip Depot. And this is rated for 10 gallons per hour. So I guess you'd have to run this at least a half an hour, maybe twice a week, to get the 10 gallons on there. Again, I think this is pretty good for seedlings. I don't know if I'd use it for overhead watering of the plants once they get established. The other thing is that if you're shooting anything up in the air like this, you're probably going to run it longer than you would normally run it to get 10 gallons because there's going to be some evaporation, especially in the sun. And, may have to run it significantly longer. But otherwise, this one seems to be working. It's probably going to take a good half an hour to an hour to run. And then I'll try a couple of more miniature rotating sprinklers, and we'll see how they do. This is a miniature sprayer too. Before we get on to the next one, this is a fan spray, and this one is made by the same manufacturer, but it's a quarter circle, and you can configure these little miniature spray heads for a fan, which is this quarter, or a full spray, or a narrow strip. So those are kind of versatile, and this one, works pretty well too. You can see but you could put these in the corners, quarter sprays, and try those. Okay. Okay, this is a square sprinkler, a regular square pattern sprinkler. And I kind of like this. This seems like it's wetting everything, pretty much. But it puts out a lot of water. I don't know how many gallons a minute, but I don't think you'd have to water it very long to get the soil damp. This is like all the other tests I did with a 25 psi pressure reducer. Maybe if you went down to like a 40 psi, it'd go up a little higher, but I think this is pretty close. I know if you put full water pressure on this from the house, it would go up to 5, 6, 7 feet in the air. So this seems like a good alternative. Like I said, I think 5 or 10 minutes at the most would drench them, because it looks like it's getting everywhere. And they're cheap. You'd need 4 of them. And again, this would be good for seedlings. But I would switch over to the drip irrigation when the plants get a little larger. I do have a problem with fungus and mold in the summer. And this year we had a pretty vast amount of rain, like most people in the country, and my tomato plants did not do too well because of all the mold. Okay, this is another mini sprinkler. It's a rotating spray pattern, and this seems to be working pretty well. But even with the lower pressure here of the 20 psi, it's got a radius of 8 to 10 feet. It's called a large full circle spinner. It's got a 10 gallon per hour flow with 25 to 50 psi, and it's also made, I believe, by Mr. Landscaper as the manufacturer. And this seems okay, and it seems like it's catching everything, although it's hard to see right now because of wet the ground so much. But if you look at, let me get a little closer. It's a spinning type sprinkler head, and I had to throttle it down. You see below there, there's a right there. There's a valve which I turned down. So even with 25 psi, I throttled it back a little bit. You don't need it to go 8 to 10 feet in this garden. So that's another possibility. And then what you do is after the roots get developed, see, I got it plugged into the drip system. You just unplug that and put the other emitter right there back in. So that's another possibility. I kind of like this one too, because it seems like it's spreading it out. I can look at the drips around the edges, and it's adjustable, and it doesn't throw a huge amount of water all at once at it. It lets it sink in a little bit. So that's another possibility. Okay, now that I've changed clothes and dried off, I'll give you my final impressions and conclusions. I think the mini sprinkler I liked the best was the rotating yellow sprinkler that actually turned around. I think it has a couple of advantages. Number one, you can plug it into the existing drip irrigation system you have, which is convenient, and when you're done, just unplug it and plug in the regular drip emitter. It also seems easier to control. It doesn't seem like it's going to spray water everywhere. If you push it down on the stake lower to the ground, I think it's pretty effective. So I think I'm going to try that next year and see what works. They all work to some degree, but they all seem to work better when they have a lower water pressure because the square foot garden is so small. And like I said, I use 20 to 25 psi pressure reducers, and I use that for the drip irrigation system as well. I use one of those for every block. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.